Hey out there, this is Friday, October 7th, 2016, here in Northern California where it's just about exactly 9:25 in the morning. And today I want to talk about a bunch of different stuff. Um, right off the bat, I kind of was thinking about the Alex Jones show and InfoWars and what's been going on with Julian Assange supposedly going to drop a bombshell, and Alex is mad that he didn't come through, but he said some things and he was apologizing for the things he said about him, and knowing that the man's under great duress and hated by a lot of powerful establishment type people. On this is not Democrat, Republican, or conservative, liberal type thing. This is just information that the public, that certain people like Assange thought the public should have, and let the chips fall where they may, sort of thing, and no biases necessarily, and but uh, I really admire Alex Jones. I really think the man is a genius. I'm sure he's a genius. I mean, if you listen to his vocabulary, he's very learned in the stuff he's interested in, like history, and he's very courageous. I think to take the stand he has, and he's got a lot of wherewithal. He knows how to get a lot of great guests on, high powerful guests on the show, and that's definitely noteworthy and respectable. And I think to myself sometimes, I like to be a friend to Alex because I see a lot of myself in him, and the passion, just the caring and the concern. Really, it's love, but it doesn't always come across as love. It comes across a bit, for lack of a better term, a bit maniacal. And but we should ask ourselves, what makes people have this kind of mania where they get these outbursts that later they feel were inappropriate, like the ranting fits that Alex goes into, for example. And I've seen that myself quite a bit, and I'm trying to pull away from it as I get older, and I think Alex will too. But I guess the main thing is that we're getting our point across, and we're using terms that edify, that instruct people properly. And Alex being such a high-profile guy, I think, when I hear anything he says, he's got the capacity to popularize terms. And there's a new term he's added to his repertoire recently, his vocabulary, in the last several months, and I really don't like it. And I've commented on the YouTube videos and let him know that I really don't like the term, and it's just GD. So to me, it's unnecessary and it's below him. He doesn't need to stoop to that level. He's got a great vocabulary to dig into to express himself, and there's plenty of expressive terms that can get the point across. I mean, calling the establishmentarian types that have been running roughshod over humanity for so many years, and he's frustrated and tired of it. These people are, like I say, they're a murderous gaggle of ruthless thugs. They're liars, cheaters, thieves, and there's nothing they won't do because apparently by their fruits they've abandoned their conscience. I'm not judging them in the sense that I'm condemning them, but yes, I'm being discerning and judging in that sense and saying, look, these are bad people. Okay, they're trying to impoverish the world because they get more power. These are satanic forces, is what they are. So I understand Alex's passion very much, and I admire it. It's just that I think that he can use terms that are less offensive, because I know I'm not the only guy out there that's offended by the term GD, And I know a lot of his staff, his crew are. I know a lot of his family are, his friends. And so I just think that he'd do himself a great service if he could, learn a little more control over the tongue, and these little things, this whole idea of taking God's name in vain mean a lot. They're very symbolic and they're very powerful. But I think I'd like to go on to something else now. But if I was Alex's friend, to sum this up, I would I would, be, kind of in his face. I wouldn't be a friend that just let him skate all the time. I'd confront him on issues and say, Alex, are you sure this is something you want to, you know what I mean? Ponder it a little more deeply and then decide if you want to really, do this thing because, you've got a lot of power. You're in the media. You've got millions of people that are listening to you around the world. And to popularize a term like that so many people find offensive, and there's so many other terms that could supplant it. So that would be the last thing I'd have to say is that I'd be his best friend, I think, because it seems to me that somebody's got to be able to stand up to Alex and say, look, I love you, man, but you know what? This is something that really bugs me. I don't want you, if you can refrain, if you could do that for me, because to me it's living by the golden rule. I don't want to really say anything. I mean, even though we've all got free speech and I stand behind that 100%. We don't need to go out of our way to offend somebody and just jab them in the eye. And that's what it kind of feels like, is that a lot of people take it very personally. And for me, it was never a teaching from family or home or the church or anything else. Mainly I just never sounded right, and knowing that, we're not supposed to talk, lightly. I mean, God's powerful. If he wants somebody damned, he'll damn them. It's not up to us. We're nobody. We should be learning from him. And he's a very merciful, graceful, forgiving God. And this is what we should really tap into. But, I have a dear friend from down in the Santa Cruz area. And, his dad, actually, I know a lot of the family. And, he was the nicest guy in the world, Gene. And, but whenever you see him, he was a professed atheist, but the nicest guy you could ever meet. But he was always using that GD this, GD that. And I know, he died of cancer. I think he was up in his 80s. Maybe it was his 70s. He wasn't that old. But, he ended up dying. He died with his tongue was kind of stuck in his throat, basically, and it sounded like an awful way to go. And I couldn't help but correlate the two, whether there or not there is a correlation between the way that Gene talked, that using the Lord's name in vain, the GD thing, or not. I don't know. But maybe I'm being a little superstitious. All I know is I'm sure Alex is going to use the term again. It's just that I personally wish he wouldn't, and I know that I'm not the only guy out there. His family, friends, peers, his staff, his reporters, I think a lot of people, and the general public, a lot of people that listen to him also, I think, would rather he just not use that one thing, because, I can overlook the maniacal rants. That's fine. I get that, because, he's passionate. He's a loving, caring human being. He's got children. He wants a future for his children. So I really understand Mr. Jones, really, at a very, very grassroots level within my own heart and soul, my spirit, my mind, my life. Because, the only way we're ever going to fix anything here is to confront it. And, he's really tied up, I think, in this election thing. I think he's too concerned that, Trump's not going to win the thing, or it's going to come down to a tie, and then we're going to have a big Supreme Court thing. And, the times are bizarre. I mean, they're surreal. And I agree with that. That, what's going on in the world very likely may be biblical in proportion, okay? The whole thing with Russia now being provoked, NATO and George Soros types, all these people that want to get war started because it's a last-ditch effort to prop up a failed crony capitalist fascist economy. That's what we have. It's filled with price fixing and price gouging. I heard a story about back east, the gouging of $10 a gallon gas. Well, I mean, hey, if you listen to Lou Rockwell, he'll say, well, that's fine. That's capitalism. Maybe he's right. I mean, maybe we should just all have our own gasoline, all have our own, license to sell gas. I mean, if that's the way it's going to be, and it should be the same for anything else that's exorbitant, if they're being gouged in housing and, whatever it is, we've all got to have our own stuff. This is why centralization isn't good and decentralization is good. But beyond that, the whole system has just been price gouged to death. I mean, up one side and down the other my whole life. It's just happened incrementally, so we don't notice it. But now, Alex Jones had Steve Pachenik. He was I don't know exactly, he high diplomat, maybe, kind of clandestine into the subterfuge of the workings of American politics and economics. It's all one and the same. It's how these things work. Like, what Perkins' book on, the Confessions of an Economic Hitman. He was on that kind of level. But Pachenik, I like most of what he says. I think he's getting to be a more likable guy. I think he's gaining more and more wisdom every day. And but one of the things he said that I think wasn't true, and he said that just the presidency is a figurehead, that he doesn't have any real power, that it's vestigial type of thing, symbolic. And he alluded to that. And Alex didn't say anything to counter that. But if you asked Alex, he'd think there's a lot of power in the executive office, and that that it's very important to have Trump in there. And I actually would agree with that. And we all know that the president has a lot to do with policy, and there is things he could do on an executive basis. But the most important thing I see, that they didn't touch on is how much the establishment hates Trump. And all the establishmentarians, I mean, we're talking about the neocons. So, you can't say that I'm just all pro-conservative. I'm not, because these people sicken me. The Bushes, I mean, I've got nothing good to say about these people. And I don't even like, Jones, he thinks he likes Ronald Reagan, but he doesn't know the stuff that Ronald Reagan did. I mean, the war on drugs, he didn't help. He dumped the mental institutions. I mean, the homeless people, he really ramped up the amount of homeless people just by dumping the mental institutions, cutting the funding. I believe he was into war financing. There was a lot of deregulation, it felt like, in the banking industry, and that's when housing prices started to go up. It was more easy for these people to manipulate markets, and of course they all do. These are special interest groups that are colluding. The establishment I'm talking about is just like one big monolithic monopoly. That's it. It's just a hydra monopoly of all these various special interest groups that benefit from the shenanigans. And I mean shenanigans. We're talking about crony capitalism. That's not as innocent as it sounds. Look it up. It's akin to fascism. When the government itself says, look, we don't care this goes against the interests of these sector of people, creating more poverty and making it harder for people to get out of poverty. We're going to do it anyhow because it benefits us. I mean, it's logical, right? It's only logical. So that's where these people, come up with these policies. That's how our government has slowly, incrementally, gradually turned fascist. And people just excuse it. They say, well, he's got to make a profit. He's selling less of those things, so, he's got to charge more, okay, because he's selling less. Do you get how that works, that logic? Okay, but that's not capitalism. If you had free market supply and demand capitalism, the very best example I can give you, okay, is the VCR, okay? Because if you go back 37 years ago, 35 years ago, let's say, in 1981, when VCR was $1,100 for a good one, okay, and people used to just rent these things, okay, but now they're abundant. Your VCR dollars have gone way up in worth, and that's what happens under supply and demand capitalism. That's called progress. That's called your currency doing what it's supposed to do, going up in worth. Okay, that's what's supposed to happen. This is the root. This is the key to solving all of our problems. But this is the antithesis of what the establishmentarians want. They need poverty. If your currency keeps going up in worth relative to not just, useless trinkets like VCRs, but in terms of housing and food, the essentials, those things that we all use, fuel, and all the things that we use in life, okay, then that would feel really good. Your sense of security would increase greatly. All of us would have an entirely different paradigm. Our sense of fearfulness would diminish completely. Our sense of freedom would increase, okay, because you can't be free under